Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining today's webinar on selecting the right app stack. We're going to dive into this in a little bit more information, really to try and simplify the decision process when selecting apps to use in your business. It is a little bit of a minefield out there, so like I say, we do seek to try and simplify the decision process. Now, before we do just dive into that, I just wanted to say that you are all on listen only mode today, so if you do have any questions, please do feel free to pop those into the Q&A section at the bottom. And of course, you can also use the chat feature as well, which you will also find at the bottom of the screen. And finally, I just need to let you know that we are recording the session today, so we can circulate that, first of all, to anyone who's not able to attend, and also to publish that on our YouTube channel as well. Okay, so before we do dive into the decision process or the steps to take when selecting the right app, I just firstly want to tell you a little bit more about myself, and I suppose why I'm here today hosting this session. So first of all, I've been with Jackson Stephen for 22 years. It will be 23 in August. So I have actually done my professional exams, done my training, on-the-job training, not worked anywhere else. So throughout all my career, I've been with Jackson Stephen. So my professional training and professional exams have all been done with Jackson Stephen. So since around about 2008, I became one of our general practice managers. So I looked after a portfolio of clients of various sizes, actually, mainly up until the audit threshold, and from various industry types. So we had property management businesses, engineering businesses, civil engineers, solicitors practices. I looked after our professional practices too. So I've got quite a varied background in terms of different industry types, and also different sizes of clients as well. And as a general practice manager, my team were ultimately responsible for providing the year-end compliance, personal tax compliance, any corporate tax compliance. So making sure that all that was done in advance of the deadline, so clients understood their tax liabilities. And we also did assist with bookkeeping and VAT, and in some cases provided management accounting and advisory. Now, with the emergence of technology, it's really kind of started to change the accountancy profession, and we have ourselves now introduced quite a few different digital services. I've spoken to some of you on the call in relation to, first of all, cloud implementation, so setting up cloud accounting software, and that's something we've been doing for quite a while. But in 2018, we decided to actually just solely focus, or to change my focus, to be focusing on these digital services. So my main role now is overseeing our digital services team, who implement technology for clients, and we also implement that technology internally as well, so looking at how we can do things differently, and also then providing change both to clients and internally as well, and really helping to promote those digital services. And the reason that I suppose took a step over to that, to the digital services side, is that I was really just interested in how technology was really changing our profession, how technology could help, I suppose, first of all, us service our clients, but also how technology could help clients as well, help clients in their businesses, predominantly by giving them access to real-time information to then really start to focus on strategic decisions and things like that. And I just actually had a genuine interest, or still have a genuine interest, in actually helping businesses. So I find it really really interesting, and it's really with this sort of digital background which I'm speaking to you, which I'm speaking to you today. So like I say, the purpose of this session is really to look at how to select or what to think about when we're actually selecting the right apps to use in our business, so what we call an app stack. So an app stack is a set of programs that help in performing a certain task. And in our case, that task is the recording of financial information. Traditionally, we may call that bookkeeping. So each software provider, whether that's Xero, whether that's QuickBooks, whether that's Sage Business Cloud, have their own app marketplaces, and those that are on cloud accounting software will already have some experience or have seen these app marketplaces. And the app marketplaces cover a whole range of different apps. So we have apps that can streamline wider business operations, that can focus on us having just one point of data entry. And if we have that one point of data entry, then of course we have access to real-time information. So we have apps that will help with our data collection, such as purchase invoice automation, which uses OCR technology to post invoices, and using document fetch to automatically download invoices. And then we also have sales automation apps to really import sales transactions, say for example made on a website or through a point of sale system, directly into that accounting software. So that's what I mean by data collection apps. We have apps that help with business processes, and these cover a wide range of business processes, such as CRM, such as job management, such as time recording and billing, inventory management, and payroll and HR, to name a few. And then we have apps that can really actually start to enhance user experience, whether that's internally through actually having access to predictive cash flow tools, or whether that's providing enhancements to your customers by providing payment services to your customers. So they do cover quite a wide range of various different processes and activities. And it's because they do cover quite a wide range of different processes and different activities, and because some of the app marketplaces themselves are so big, Xero's itself has over 700 apps available, that can actually make the process of selecting the right app quite difficult, or certainly quite daunting when we do, especially when we're actually new to the app marketplace. And of course, what we do need to do, if we just actually look at the visual here, I think you can sort of see the complexities that can arise, like I say, notwithstanding the fact that there are over 700 apps to choose from. But we might need an app, for example, a data collection app, to say collect sales data, that will integrate directly with our website, that will send information into our accounting software, but we'll also need to actually provide customers, or our sales customers, with a quick and easy way to pay. We may want to implement a purchase invoicing tool, but that purchase invoice tool might need to actually directly integrate, again, not only with our accounting software, but with our inventory system too. So say, for example, if we need to receipt goods, to mark goods as received for the purpose of our stock reporting and stock control. Or it may be that we have a marketing app that needs to integrate with our CRM system to keep all information in one place, which in turn needs to integrate with the sales system to transfer through that sales data, and also the accounting system, of course, to record the financial transactions. So like I say, picking the right app can actually itself be quite a daunting task. I don't want to say complex, because hopefully we're here to make that decision process a little bit smoother. So what I thought would be useful then, like I said, to try and give you some tips and tools or things to think about when selecting an app, was to really let you know what steps we would go through when we're actually helping clients pick steps, because then you could actually then practice these within your own business, or take this information away, and it will give you certainly a starting point if you're actually considering diving into that app marketplace. Okay, so when we are selecting the right app, then what we do first of all is we'd actually look at building a business profile. So if you're working obviously within your business, what I would recommend that you do is seek to fully understand not only what your finance team are doing, but also how your wider processes actually drive information, or what your wider processes do, and how that affects your accounting software. So for example, understanding exactly what any sales teams do and what any sales information sales teams might need, understanding what warehouse systems are used, and understanding what information people in the warehouse need, understanding what features they might need within an app. So really getting under the skin and understanding not just what the finance team does, but also what the wider business does. And I am going to dive into building a profile in a little bit more detail later on. But what this also helps us to do is actually then assess the needs, once we fully understand the business, assess the needs of each team. So what features do they want? what features are most important to them, and what is less important. Remember, we're actually buying off the shelf products here, so we do need to be, in some cases, a little bit realistic with what can be achieved out there. And doing this and understanding this really helps us start to whittle, when we do actually get further down the process, to actually whittle the number of apps that are available down to actually those that will specifically help us. Now, like I say, I'm going to come back to building a business profile in a moment. And then what we'll do is, once we've actually built our business profile, and like I say, we have reduced the number of apps down because we now have a detailed understanding of what we need within our business and what's more important to us, we'll then actually look at the apps that are available and really sort of question and understand what those apps can give us and how they compare and how they rank really in comparison to our needs, to our overall needs. We'll have then, if we've actually then say got three or four key apps that we know do fit the bill, we'll then actually put together a comparison of those apps to actually compare each one. Then we can actually clearly see, first of all, for our own purposes, the merits and downfalls of each, and also we can really share that and get other people involved in the process to actually see what their thoughts are on each of the apps that are available to us. And then finally, what we will do is actually, what we will do is actually then map the process, map what the processes will look like with these new apps in place. And again, it's important to do that. It's important to get everyone involved because people, the implementation of apps will inevitably involve other people outside of the finance team throughout the business, definitely. And we do need to have an element of buy-in from those people. And of course, they will then themselves want to understand how that works. So by mapping out the process and telling them exactly how each step will work and how it will affect them really helps to make sure that everyone's bought into this process as well. So I mentioned about building a business profile. So I'm really here just going to touch on I suppose what questions we ask, what we dive into, what we think about when we're actually building a business profile. And I have alluded to some of this, to a little bit of this already. So I will just actually seek to build on that. So first of all, when we're actually building this business profile, it's important to understand what the goals of the business are. What are we trying to achieve over the short term, and what do we want to achieve over the long term? Is it that we want to increase efficiency? Is it that we want to grow our business? Or is it both? If we can seek to understand what our goals are, then of course that can actually then help us know which apps will work better. What we don't want to do, certainly if we're actually looking at the long term, we don't necessarily want to implement an app now that covers, that would satisfy our short-term goals, but doesn't necessarily then deal with the long term, or isn't sufficient for the long term, because of course what would happen is we'd only need to change app once that app is no longer available for us. So if we do have plans to grow, it's important to know that at the upfront, so we can actually be sure that any apps that we pick are also future-proofed as well. Okay, we'll then seek to identify the pain points as well of the company. And I appreciate this probably sounds quite obvious, but it's very, very important to actually sit down and think, right, which parts of this process, which part of my sales process is not working right, which part is actually causing me or my team the most pain, and which areas maybe of our purchasing process is actually causing us the most problems. Because I do often say, anyone that's spoken to a couple of on the call today, anyone that I have spoken to, will know that if something feels like it's hard work and can be done better, then inevitably it can be done better. Definitely. So I think it's important to note down exactly what people's pain points are. So like I say, if we sit down and we understand, first of all, the sales process. So we have a great understanding of the sales process, but what is the problems in that sales process? What else do we want to provide to our clients that we feel we're not providing? And if we look at our purchasing process, what in our purchasing process is causing us a lot of time, is taking a lot of time, and again could be done smoother. When it comes to our wages, are our wages being calculated in the most efficient manner? Is wages information being captured in the most efficient manner? And then thinking about our reporting, is it easy to prepare our reports on a month-on-month basis? Do we have access to up-to-date financial information that as business owners we should have, or we should be able to provide to enable us to make decisions? And we'll then look at the financial health of the business. And of course, the financial health is very, very important and really will actually drive any decisions really ultimately in terms of investment. So it might be, when we're actually looking to implement apps, when we're actually picking the right apps for us, undoubtedly they will come with, first of all, a monthly subscription cost, but they will also come with, generally an upfront implementation cost as well, whether that is by the app provider themselves, whether you're using a professional to help with your installation. So it's very important to understand the financial health. The last thing we want to do is to invest all of our money into building a great app stack when we don't necessarily have the financial health, to actually continue in business. The continuity of the business is most important first and foremost. So I think understanding the financial health ties into then setting a budget. If we understand the budget for any proposed project, then of course, that's actually helpful when it comes to actually selecting the right apps, and we'll know which apps that we can, which apps we can look at, and of course which apps are probably a little bit too much. Okay, so just then tying into the business itself. So another thing that we do consider is how many employees that the business has, and again ties in a little bit with growth as well. So how many employees do we currently have? Do all these employees need access to first of all the software? Will the employees actually using an app? So therefore, does using a mobile app, I should say. So therefore, does the app itself need to have that mobile functionality? And again, with the number of employees that we do have, how many employees need full access? How many might actually need different user levels of access? Might need access to certain areas, but not everything. And like I say, are we actually looking to stay the same, or are we looking to grow? Because of course, if we're looking to grow, then we need to make sure that the app that we pick has the capability or is able to cope with an increased number of users, so has the user levels that we want. And we'll then look at the type of work, I suppose, that the business is actually undertaking. And again, this is quite important. This actually tells us which area that we do actually need to look at within the app marketplace itself. So, for example, does the business undertake mainly smaller and high frequency jobs? Or is it actually larger project-based jobs that actually take longer to complete? And the reason that this is important is because there are different apps that suit different types of business. So if you're dealing with a small volume of high frequency small jobs, then you need an app that's going to deal mainly with that type of work. Whereas if you're dealing with larger project-based jobs, then you're going to need an app that's going to be able to tell you or to be able to manage that job over a longer period of time. And the apps are actually quite specific in terms of what they do. So if you understand the type of work that we do deliver, and it's not just necessarily jobs, by the way, it might be that we're retail, that we're online retail, so we need to look at online apps that have that retail functionality. It might be that we're time-based, it might be a time-based business, but that will actually tell us then that we need to look at we need to look specifically for apps that will actually allow time recording. So understanding the type of work that we do deliver helps us really narrow down what it is that we're specifically looking at, and actually try and understand then what features, what we actually need to have within the app. And then what we'll do is actually assess the current tools that we've got. And I know I put tools here. It's not necessarily just tools, it's workflows. What are our current workflows and what current tools do we use? So what accounting software are we using? If we do actually use apps at the moment, what apps are we using? And we'll look at this across every sector. We will look at sales, how we deal with sales. We will look at purchases, how we deal with purchases. We will look at wages, how that information gets in there. We'll look at our reporting. We'll look at expense claims if we're a business that does expense claims, and if we're a stock man and if we carry stock, we'll look at the stock process. And if we're in retail, we'll look at the process of, you know, how those retail sales are made. So really then start to get under the skin and pull together a complete picture, like I said earlier, of what this business does. And this actually then helps us understand what features we need to see. And of course, we already know our pain points, so we know what challenges that we do need to overcome as well. And then finally, we'll understand the technology proficiency of those within the business. So of the employees in the business, of the finance team, of the people that will be involved, the people that would be potentially affected by the app, how technology savvy are those. And the reason that we do this is because, of course, if we have a high number of individuals who are very technology savvy, very technology proficient, then of course we can look at an app that is probably a little bit more complicated, that has more automation within that, because we know people might pick that app up a little bit easier, and they will adapt to that change a little bit easier. Whereas if we have people who are not so technology proficient, then what we will do is we can then actually look at apps that might be a little bit simpler to use, that maybe have more support available to them, certainly in the initial stages, and may just be a little bit more, you know, user intuitive, to actually help those people continue with help those people adapt and learn that app. And finally then, what we will do, once we've understood the current workflows, once we've understood the pain points, once we know what it is we want to achieve in the short term and long term, we know what our future looks like, we know what challenges that we need to overcome, and we know specifically what area or what type of business we are, we can then really summarise in quite a nice document what our needs are, what features we want to see, what, like I said earlier, what is most important and what is less important to us. And once we've got that, we can then actually take that information over to the app marketplace itself, and then we can actually start to really whittle down, as I said earlier, the number of apps that are available. So our 700, you know, becomes 7 or 8 ultimately. Okay, and then in assessing each of the specific apps, what we will then do is, this is actually very much tailored then to ultimately to our summary of needs. Now, our summary of needs can vary depending, you know, business to business, it absolutely can. So I've actually just put some examples here of needs and the typical questions that we may ask when we're considering apps in these processes. Like I say, this is actually probably where it becomes a little bit difficult to present, because every business's needs may be slightly different. So first of all, if I've identified a need to have training and support to use the app, because my technology proficiency, for example, isn't very strong, I need an app that's going to have good training, good support to be able to effectively use the app. So of course, what I'm going to be asking, what I'm going to be looking out for is what support is available, where is the support located, is it on demand or is it in person, and of course, can my accountant provide support with this? You know, your accountant is ultimately the best person. Don't mean to sound cheesy or anything, but your accountant is the best person to actually be able to, first of all, advise on any apps because they understand your business and what's needed, but then also to actually help your staff as well, make sure that the app is actually being used efficiently and effectively. So, you know, if your accountant is familiar with the app, then that is certainly a great place to start. So for example, if I've now identified, and remember I'm just referring to some example needs here, so I've identified a need for multiple users who will need access to the app. So again, questions I'm going to be looking at when I'm assessing these apps: how many users are included in the licensing? What are the costs for additional users or licenses? So how is that priced? And like I said earlier, if we actually have identified a need for a need, you know, an increase in staff numbers, then we need to know that the app that we're choosing has the capabilities to deal with that. So in this example, I've identified that I have some complex business requirements. So I have many products in multiple, multiple locations. So here, when I'm actually setting apps, what I'm looking for is, are there any limits on the number of products or the number of products that can actually be included in that app? So this would be an example of an inventory system, to be honest. So are there any limits on the number of products that I can upload into that app? Is that app capable of dealing with stock held at various different locations? And is there any limits on the amount of supplies I might buy a product from various different suppliers? So are there any limits, or any soft limits or hard limits in how many transactions that this app can ultimately deal with? And of course, is it easy to create additional products that would ultimately form part of our workflows? And can it manage locations in different countries, and of course in different currencies, if indeed that has been identified as part of our needs? Very common need is the need to have an app, a mobile app that can be used on the go. So of course, what we're looking for is, does the software app, I should say, that we're looking at, is there a mobile or tablet app available? What functionality is available in the mobile app? For example, some functionality is different. You might have full functionality on your PC or your laptop. You may have limited functionality on your mobile app. So if the need to have an app is high up on your list of priorities, then we need to understand, is it just the basics, or does it provide that full functionality that we want? And again, how expensive is it to use the app? Are there additional costs involved in that? And again, what's quite important, I suppose, in actually picking any app is the need to have insights into key reporting metrics and key performance indicators. So again, when we're assessing these apps, does the app have a dashboard showing the key metrics? Is the dashboard customizable? So can I actually create those apps that I actually want to? Can I actually create those apps? Can I actually create bespoke reports that show quite quickly and easily what I want to see on an ongoing basis? And what reporting is ultimately included in standard. Some of the apps actually will give quite good information. And of course, can any information that I'm actually identifying here, can that be easily exported into maybe a reporting tool that I want to use as well? And then finally, spoke about a reporting tool there. What integration is available with other specific apps? So if I take the example of the CRM system earlier, a CRM system, ideally I would want that to actually integrate with my marketing tool, because I'd want to know what information had been sent to my contacts, to my customers. So if we're looking at a CRM tool, does that easily integrate with a marketing tool, for example? Does that easily integrate with maybe a separate sales system that I might use? And again, if I'm in retail, does the app that I'm actually looking to implement, so say that might be an inventory app, does that integrate with my web store? Can I have one place that will manage everything? And then finally, when we are actually looking at this integration with other apps, how complex is it to set up? Now, a lot of the time in the marketplace, you will find that a whole range of integrations do exist, and they can quite easily be set up. But when it is set up, what does this integration look like? What information is transferred from A to B, and does that ultimately really fit with my requirements and what I need? So like I say, assessing specific apps comes probably a little bit more difficult to explain, quite simply because these various areas, these different questions are really, or these specific needs really actually come from the initial profile that we've built and the summary of needs that we've ultimately identified. And every business will have slightly different needs. So like I say, it makes it quite difficult to give generic questions that we do need to be asking, because it has to come from them needs that we've actually identified in the first stage, which is building the business profile. However, it does really highlight, I suppose, some of the more common needs, such as the need to have multiple users, such as the need to have reporting, such as the need to have a mobile app and integrations with other apps. Okay. So I'm just going to move over then to our next step. So we've built our business profile, we've whittled down that number of apps that we are looking at because we've done our summary of needs. Our summary of needs then, we've gone into the app marketplace, we've looked at various different apps that are available, we've asked the key questions, and we now have a much smaller number of apps that we're ultimately looking at, that we've identified could be possible, solutions for us. And this app, this specific comparison here is actually looking at specific payment services. We might have 2, 3, 4 of these because we might have identified we might need some inventory apps, we might need some payment services, and we might then need some purchase invoice automation, for example. But what we will do is for each app in each area, we'll actually then compare, and this is quite a basic summary, admittedly, we'll actually then compare how they perform against each other, how different they are, what are their strengths, what will they give to us in comparison to our needs, what do they not give to us, and hopefully what we can then do, like I said earlier, is share this information. So we can then share this information with the key placeholders, with the people that are involved in the process, and they can actually then make their own inquiries into each of the different apps, and ultimately maybe suggest which app is preferable for them. Okay, now I'm just moving over to the process map. So once we have actually then compared our apps, we have then identified which apps we want to use in our business. What we then need to do is make sure that app, those apps will, and you may actually do your process map and your comparison side by side actually. But ultimately what we need to do then is actually be quite clear on what the process is. Now this process map is actually taken from our proposal software, Go Proposal, which we use when we're actually pricing for specific app advisory work. So anyone who's had one of those proposals will be this and what this looks like. And of course this is only part of the story. But like I said, what we actually need to do, what we need to summarise, is how these apps are going to work together. So how are my payment services going to work? How are my purchase invoices and my bills going to get into my accounting software, and also into any inventory system that I might have there. So you can see, for the purpose of this example, we have an inventory system that feeds information into Xero, and we have our bills and expenses that are also feeding information directly into Xero. We're then going to be using payments by TransferWise in my example to make supplier payments, which again integrates directly with Xero. We're using Fruitrilly for reporting, which is bringing information directly out of Xero in this example. And of course, we can actually have HR and payroll tools to send information directly into Xero as well. The purpose isn't necessarily to go through all of the apps per se, but really to kind of show what the next step is. So once we're actually happy and we've actually identified, a series of apps that we actually want to implement in our business, we then need to document, first of all, in a visual way, what our process map will look like, using the example on the screen. But then also we need to build our detailed workflows behind that as well. So we need to sit down and say, right, for each of these sections, what does my workflow look like? So for bills, what is bills and expenses for, might even be purchase ordering. What does my ideal workflow look like? So when we actually go back to the workflows that we actually established earlier when we were building the business profile, we're now going to revisit those processes. We're going to look at sales, which is the payments category. We're going to look at bills and expenses. We're going to look at invoicing and jobs. We're going to look at payroll and HR, reporting, inventory, supplier payments, and cash management, and map out exactly what those processes look like. And doing this will actually then enable you to share that with all of the placeholders, who will then raise their own questions, which of course can then be dealt with. And if indeed, this is actually quite, it's quite an interesting part actually. If indeed this workflow doesn't necessarily work, doesn't come together how it should, then of course then we can actually go back to those, to that comparison of apps, and maybe then actually look at one of the other apps that see what this workflow would look like with one of the other apps that's available. So in terms of the process, building the profile, summarising the needs, assessing the apps that are available in that area, comparing those apps, because that gives us our overview as to how they compare against each other, and then ultimately mapping the process. First of all in a visual way, but then also by creating detailed workflows that will actually sit behind that and make it clear to everyone what those workflows will look like, and of course how they are affected by that as well. Okay, so I'm just going to take a little bit of time. I've actually sort of raced through that probably a little bit quicker than what I thought I would. Like I said, really the aim of the session is, it's quite difficult to say exactly what each business needs to be looking at. The aim of the session is to really give you a 4-step plan of what you need to do if you're considering looking at apps in your business. If you're considering looking at and implementing apps in your business, the key areas that you need to think about, which in all honesty probably extend a lot of the time a little bit beyond the financial, the finance team, because what we're actually looking at here are apps that can actually really help to streamline other business processes within the business. Now what I am probably just going to take a little bit of time just to mention here, like I said, probably race through that a little bit quicker. So I think what I am just going to do is probably just pull together some of the key apps that I ultimately do recommend. Like I say, there does need to be an assessment too, to make sure that they are right for each business. And of course to make sure that they do integrate with any other software within the business. So probably a little bit sweeping of me to say. However, the apps that we do sort of commonly see most businesses use ultimately would be, first of all, Dex Prepare, formerly known as Receipt Bank, which is a purchase invoice automation tool, which will allow you to automatically, first of all, capture any invoices that are available in online portals, such as BT, such as Vodafone, such as any utilities, etc. It will actually allow you to provide your suppliers with a dedicated email address to which they can send their purchase invoices directly to. And it will also have a mobile app, so you can actually use that for employees who can actually then take photographs of any expenses that they may have actually incurred on behalf of the business. And it will send that information directly into the accounting software using a series of rules that are set up in the background. Now that's actually a really lovely integration directly, first of all, with Xero. It does also work with Sage Business Cloud and also QuickBooks Online. It is an absolutely lovely integration, first and foremost, with Xero, but it does also then integrate with the likes of Approval Max. So when we're talking about integrations before, and seeing what else, what other integrations these apps have, Dex Prepare does, like I say, integrate with Approval Max. So this is very important for those businesses who have invoice approval processes. And it doesn't necessarily have to be invoice approval, it could even start at purchase order, by the way. But Approval Max, any invoices that are actually then received, first of all into Xero, into the awaiting approval category, are then directly sent into Approval Max and enter a predefined approval matrix. So we may say that for any accountancy invoices that come in, that come through, any invoices that code to accountancy, that invoice has to go to Sarah for approval. We can say any invoices over a certain amount may need to go to Lucy for approval. We may want to say any invoices that ask for a specific location may need to go to Sean for approval, for example. So that matrix itself can be set up directly within Approval Max. And once approved, that information, once approved, which can be done on a mobile app, by the way, as well as online, and each approval will have notifications. Once approved, that information is sent then directly back into Xero, into the awaiting payment category. And then, of course, from Xero, what we then can do using payments by TransferWise is actually make payments of our supplier invoices directly via payments by TransferWise, so we don't have to leave Xero to make those payments. So that replaces the need to actually leave the accounting software and go into online banking, say, to initiate payments. I suppose that's an example of various apps ultimately working together. So Dex Prepare, formerly Receipt Bank, into Approval Max, or into Xero, which will then send information into Approval Max and back, and then ultimately payments can be made by payments with TransferWise. Now, when it comes on to invoicing, two sides to this. First of all, there's invoicing. And again, if we're actually a project-based business, I think this is where it becomes quite interesting. Or certainly I find it quite interesting. So yeah, I'm an accountant, so yeah, that's interesting. And accountant don't go together, do they? But I certainly do find invoicing and jobs quite interesting anyway. So on the invoicing side, say we're a project-based business, and say we have a need to bill clients either through stage payments or even based on time that's been recorded. Then we have various apps available that we do have. What's highlighted on here is Workflow Max, and with Workflow Max, what we can do is we can actually use that to submit any time that has been spent on certain projects. We can actually set up our project amount, our project budget first and foremost. We can actually, if I just take that a step back, sorry, we can actually raise our quotes in there. Our quotes then will turn into accepted jobs, acts as a workflow tool. So everyone that's actually involved in the process can ultimately then receive a notification of the task that they need to undertake at any specific point in time, in line with your service standards. And ultimately then, when time has been spent on certain jobs, that time can be recorded, like I say, directly through a mobile app or directly online. And once that time has been recorded, and as well, costs can be recorded, so Dex Prepare can integrate directly with Workflow Max too to send cost information in there. And once those costs and time have been recorded, then the sales invoice can be raised directly within Workflow Max, which is then automatically sent into Xero. And of course, what we can do in terms of our reporting matrix is actually see where our projects are up to at any point in time directly within Workflow Max. And like I say then, that information is then sent directly into Xero. Now, of course, what we may want to do is actually provide a payment service to our customers. A payment service is a link that appears on an invoice, which will actually give customers a way to actually pay their invoice there and then. So we actually may want to actually include payment service on those sales invoices. So in that case, what we need to be sure of is that Stripe, for example, which is a payment service, can integrate directly with Workflow Max. If Stripe doesn't integrate with Workflow Max, what we may choose to do is actually send our invoices out of Xero. So this is where the workflow side of it comes into effect. We may then choose to actually send our invoices directly out of Xero to enable us to actually put that Pay Now button on directly from Xero, but Xero can then actually send information back into Workflow Max, for example, to let Workflow Max know that job has been invoiced, so we can still actually provide, we can still actually see our reporting tools, our performance on each job, I should say. And then also what we may then want to do, so again, just to provide some examples, we actually may, I mean, statistically, when you do actually have a payment link, you are statistically proven to actually get paid quicker. That was some statistics that were published by Go Cardless, which is another payment service. It deals more so with the monthly direct debits. But you are statistically proven to actually get paid quicker, which in some respects actually reduces the need to, or should reduce the time spent on debt collection. But of course, if debt collection is an issue, you can actually look to actually automate some of that debt collection process with apps such as Chaser. So it'll actually just help to speed up the collection of cash. And then finally, what we can do, I will just touch on the reporting side of it. So again, what we can do once the information is actually flowing beautifully into Xero, what we can actually then do is use reporting tools to actually really bring that information to life. So the accounting software, whether that's Xero, QuickBooks, Sage themselves, do have some good, some good reports, some P&L, balance sheet, age receivables, payables, etc. But where they do actually probably fall short a little bit is actually bringing that information to life. And what I mean by that is presenting financial information and in a quick, and easy way, maybe for non-accountants to look at and to understand. So with the use of graphs, with actually the use of live dashboards, and with the use of live dashboards, and also with the use of, I suppose, by setting those dashboards up to show only the information you want to see, for example, then you can actually just really start to home in on, I suppose, bring the information to life, but also home in on the information that you want to see. So typically we see future reporting loaded with, at the outset, financial forecasts that may have been done for, in line with the business plan, they may have been done in line with marketing plan. You may not necessarily have a full forecast, but you might have certain targets that you want to achieve or need to achieve within your business. And those can be set quite easily within future reporting and then monitored on an ongoing basis within there. So I think just a few examples of what can be achieved within the app marketplace. But like I said, I don't necessarily want to generalise those too much. Like I said, some of the key apps and the key areas, but what is important to do is to really understand the business. So like I say, to recap on those steps, understand the business, build the business profile, and look at all areas of the business, not just the one. That's actually quite a common, we do see that quite commonly, where we might look at purchase invoice automation, but that can have an impact on, certainly in stock-based businesses, it can have an impact on on an inventory system. Information might need to go into the inventory system, and quite often, people will just purely think about invoice automation without necessarily thinking of the link between the purchasing and the inventory system. So, like I said, building the business profile, understanding the needs, understanding the workflows and the pain points helps us summarise and bring together ultimately what we need. Summarise our needs, rank them in order, what's most important, what's least important, and then go into that app marketplace, and on the back of what your needs are, have a look at each app and make sure and summarise, does each app satisfy these needs? Does it satisfy all of my high priority and less of my low priority? That's ultimately what we need to be looking at. And then once we've pulled that comparison together, like I said, that comparison of the needs, share that, let everyone be involved in the process, let everyone take a look at that to see what their thoughts are. And ultimately then, when we do think that we've actually got the, an app that will work for us, we can then look and document what those workflows look like, map that process. So before we do sign up to anything, map that process, make sure that everything links together in the right way, and that we have addressed our pain points ultimately, and that we are actually enhancing our experience of that to ultimately get access to that information, that real-time information that we need to get access to as well. Okay, so hopefully you found that a little bit useful. Like I say, it's probably a little bit hard to cover all aspects. I would be here all day, but hopefully there's some key things to think about there. If you do want some more information in relation to sort of any of our apps, we do actually have an app of the month that does actually go out on our iNews, so do make sure that you are signed up for that. I think the latest one actually went this week, which was actually looking at CRM software, in particular Capsual CRM. So do keep an eye out on those. And also within our guides and publications section, we do actually have some guides in there that are looking at digital tools in specific areas, such as CRM, such as job management, such as for professional practices, such as trade and construction businesses, also for cash management as well. So please do have a look at those guides. And also, if you do follow us on social media, either on YouTube, LinkedIn or Twitter, we do also share information through those as well. So yeah, our aim is to try and sort of share as much information to help businesses either make decisions or let businesses know what apps, what information, what is actually out there, what's available out there. You can of course contact your usual relationship manager, who'll also be able to help. And of course I'm more than happy to have any discussions with anyone, whether that's just to act as a sounding board, you know, if you're actually sort of looking at, you know, if you're actually considering looking at implementing apps on your own, or whether you actually just need any help and you'd like us to be involved in that process, you'd like us to make that decision for you, and to provide recommendations, and ultimately help with any form of implementation and ongoing training. So do feel free to contact me. My contact details are just on the screen there. And we also are actually running webinars monthly. So again, please do feel free to look out for those being published on our iNews. Our next webinar is Xero versus Sage Business Cloud. This is probably more aimed at people that are not already using cloud accounting software, who ultimately will need to be using some form of cloud accounting software for the next stages of making tax digital. So look out for that. Like I said, there's many products available. Some people are, you know, it's probably quite difficult to even choose in some respects, but which is the right cloud accounting platform for them. So I'm just going to take a look at how Xero and Sage Business Cloud compare to each other, ultimately. So that's on the 12th of May. So if anyone has any questions, please do feel free to pop them into the Q&A section. I will be leaving you in a moment. So like I say, if you do any questions come to mind after I have actually gone offline, then again, please do feel free just to just drop me an email. Or like I say, you can speak to your usual relationship manager as well. Okay. Well, I hope you all found that interesting. That's actually just giving you a little bit of food for thought. I will very much now leave you to it. So I hope you have enjoyed the rest of your day. I hope you have a lovely week, and enjoy the weekend. And I suppose I hope you get to enjoy some of the nice weather as well. It seems to be quite bright here. So yeah, hope you manage to enjoy some of that. And I will speak to you all soon.